We're the Maltzmans, the owners of Continental Divide. We're super excited to have you here. This is the last member of our house. She is downstairs asleep, so we just brought her picture today. But we want to thank you and welcome you for joining us. We're going to start, as usual, with our Colorado Wine Challenge from the Colorado Wine Board. Hope you have a glass of wine with you. We're going to raise it up, say cheers. Cheers to you all. And if you have a chance, take a drink with a Colorado wine at least once a week. Post it on social media with the hashtag Colorado Wine Challenge. Today we have an esteemed panel here. Live from the Breckenridge tasting room, we have Andy. Say hello, Andy. Live from Fair Play, we have Leanne. And we have
hello, everyone.
And we have our esteemed guest speaker, Courtney, from the Breckenridge Cheese Shop, right across the plaza.
Hi, guys.
So today's topic is wine and cheese pairing, and I'm going to let Courtney lead it off with a little bit of information about that. And we'll all just be enjoying drinking wine, and if you have a little bit of cheese that you can have with you, you can nibble along. If people have any questions, they are welcome to type them in the box, and I will feed them to our panelists, and somebody I'm sure will take up the challenge. No question is too dumb. You even can ask what pairs with Kraft singles if that's the only cheese you have at home, or perhaps Cheese Whiz. Or if you're really, really desperate for cheese, it's actually Kong dog treats that look like cheese, and I'm sure something pairs with it because Scout seems to eat it with everything.
Okay.
So with that, let's turn it over to you, Courtney.
All right. Thanks for having me. So as far as pairing wine with cheese, I think it's mostly about balance. You want the cheese to accompany the wine equally. So we don't want anything that's going to blast out your taste buds on either side. So not a crazy wine that's going to knock out your cheese or vice versa. So I have a selection of a few of them, and then I have some suggestions for how to pick a cheese at home too. Like if you needed to make a pairing on your own, or you wanted to host a wine and cheese night, what are some things that you can look for to help you get the ball started with that and have everything make sense? And then another fun thing to do if you were having a sort of a group tasting would be to find something that doesn't work. Like a really big cheddar with a really soft wine, or that would just like really blow things out of the water and out of proportion. So that's a good thing to keep in mind and to, just to get things started, and we'll dig into those cheeses, to those cheeses kind of as we go through the wines, that is.
And to reiterate what she said, I mean, there are a couple basic rules of thumb we'll probably keep coming back to. Number one, go with your gut. Just the same as if you're selecting your wine when you're doing a tasting. If these things go well together, go for it. If you're just not feeling it, no.
Yeah,
and again, that basic rule of thumb is the food shouldn't overpower the wine shouldn't overpower the food. And also we'll talk about things like congruent tasting versus complementary tasting, or sometimes you'll hear them referred to as parallel and perpendicular. Sometimes you'll have flavors in common between your wine and your food, and those are congruent flavors. They go really nicely together. And sometimes you'll get those complementary flavors, which are different flavors that kind of balance each other out. Think peanut butter and jelly. That kind of rich fattiness of the peanut butter goes nicely with that acidity of the jelly. Kind of same idea here with your wine and your cheese. So without further ado, we'll start with our first wine and our first cheese. So the first wine is, which you guys might be familiar with, the 2015 Blanc de Blanc sparkling wine from Sonoma Coast, 100% Chardonnay grapes. So we're going to take a flavor profile kind of each one of these and then put them together, see what we think. The cheese that we're pairing with it is a brie, but it's a little something different. It's a triple cream truffle brie. So truffle, I assume, is, we're going to have a little bit of truffle, something around there in there. What does triple cream mean?
triple cream is the fat content in the cheese. So really buttery, think like smooth like butter rather than sort of like sticky like some bries can be, sort of tacky. This more has the consistency of like a silky butter. And then we also suggest, so triple cream is kind of just a pretty standard one to go with, but really with bubbles, you can go in any direction. Craft, that's fine to pair with champagne. Pizza and champagne, like that's a really good one. Like anything like that, I think it goes with everything. But a triple cream brie is a nice one to go with. And then just think like celebratory champagne, pair with a truffle as well. Just a depth of a flavor. Truffle is a kind of mushroom. It brings a little bit of an earthiness, maybe brings it down a little bit. But yeah, that's a good one to go with. Triple cream.
So Courtney, I got a question that's coming in from one of the audience members, which is, when you're eating brie, are you supposed to eat that sort of hard part that's on the outside of it? Maybe you can hold it up and people can see what you're talking about.
I am pro rind 100%. I say eat it unless it's wax. I think you can give it a try. So I've got a couple of other, weird ones that we'll get into, but like, it looks scary, but it tastes really good. It does. And then another one. So this is just a natural rind on this Pavé du Nord. And like, you can eat it for sure. It may be bitter. It may not taste awesome, but it won't hurt you. None of the rinds will hurt you. So I say, if you like it, dig into it for sure. But it never hurts to try, unless it's wax, then don't eat it.
That's fair. And I'm actually loving these two together. I mean, the sparkling white kind of has, first of all, I mean, as a white wine, it's going to have a little bit more acidity to it, but the sparkles add a little bit more of that bite, kind of, make it feel a little bit more acidic. So a nice creamy cheese really balances that out pretty nicely.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is one of my personal favorite pairings. I love how the beautiful acidity and carbonation in the sparkling wine just basically serves as a palate cleanser. So like Courtney said, it's amazing with brie because of that rich, creamy fat going with the acid of the sparkling, and they both tend to have more delicate flavors. I also love sparkling paired with buttery popcorn.
Love it.
Really good. So by the way, if you like our sparkling, if you haven't tried it, we introduced it right before New Year's. And I think we probably only have, I don't know, maybe 15 cases left. So if you like it, grab it while it's available, because we probably won't have another sparkling until next New Year's. So cheers.
Yeah, these do kind of have a nice earthy funk too that, that kind of work pretty nicely together.
Yeah, and that brie has that little wheel specifically is nicely aged. So a little extra edge on there.
Absolutely. I kind of want to just stick with this one for, the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Sorry to waste anybody's time.
I know, that's kind of the grand finale, truffles and sparkling wine. You're like, done.
May have to come back to that later.
Courtney, how do you guys decide what cheeses you're going to carry? Because you always have just an amazing selection of cheese.
We just try to just cover the spectrum, and then also customer demand. It has a lot to do with it. Seasonality has something to do with it as well. More heavy, wash-drying, stinky cheeses in the winter, kind of heavier in your gut, and then lighter, fresher stuff. Think, fresh goat's milk, mozzarella, that kind of stuff in the spring and summer. Just kind of like fruit, whatever's in season is best.
Okay. What do we have next there, guys?
We have Riesling Süß for our wine. Here, let me get you a labeled one so you can see. You guys might be familiar with this one. It's been out for, almost a year now?
Yeah.
Something like that, or 2018 Riesling Süß. Süß meaning sweet in German. This one, though, is just a little bit off dry. Like 1.5 grams per liter of residual sugar, so just a touch of sweetness. A little bit more food friendly as far as the Rieslings go.
All right, so in the cheese we selected to pair with the Riesling was Taleggio. And the reason we did Taleggio was because traditionally you'll find Riesling coming from Alsace, and playing off of the terroir of the wine, you'd want to pair it with an Alsatian cheese like Munster, traditional Munster, like the little orange blob, not the deli stuff. And Taleggio is another wash drain cheese, so this one is kind of gonna stand in its place. And like I said, so this one it's super earthy, like a little bit on the funky side, and one of those rinds that you may not want to eat, but is totally edible, and it's delicious. And it's where you get a lot of that funk and flavor. And it also has a little bit of a sandy texture, which is pretty cool to nibble on too. But pairs with that Riesling, but playing off of the terroir, that's probably the best way to choose a wine, or to choose a cheese to go with a wine. If you're sort of in the dark, or if you're, planning on opening a bottle and you want to find a cheese at home, just go off of where it's from.
Region with region is often one of my safer go-to bets if I'm ever in doubt. Just trust those traditions.
Classic rule of pairing. I love it. That's a perfect pairing. And I love pairing the funkier cheeses with sweet wines, because the sweetness actually tones down the funkiness and almost makes it creamier.
Yeah. Like Andy was saying with contrasting and parallel flavors, it's one of those contrasting flavors that ends up working really well.
Do you know, Courtney, what the rind is washed with on the Taleggio?
It's just washed with like a saltwater bath.
Okay, like a brine.
Yeah.
So that would explain the kind of saltiness that I'm getting a little bit from the wine, from the rind. Well, I don't know if it's a saltiness.
Well, I mean, no, you're definitely tasting the salt, but I don't know if I can give the wash credit for that. That this kind of mold that ends up on here, this blue or this orange kind, is a bee linen, and that's from washing it in a salt water or in like a beer or a liqueur. This is the kind of rind that you end up with.
Okay.
Courtney, we have a question from Sherry who wants to know, what is rind made out of? How does it happen?
It's mold in time. So yeah, this started off as just like a beautiful, kind of just like this, just its paste. And then over time, they bathe it in water and they'll flip it over, or they'll wash it, like literally like kind of with a brush, with that saltwater solution. And then they'll flip it over. And then in time, it grows this mold in the right conditions, whether that be in a cave or, kind of a man-made cave, but that's like, it just makes the happy environment for the mold to grow in, and the cheesemongers or the makers can control what kind of mold grows on them and turns into a rind.
And so what's the difference between the rind that looks almost sort of beige and the little spots that are green?
Different kinds of mold. So that could be, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but Taleggio is the beginner cheese, or like the mother cheese to Gorgonzola. So every Gorgonzola, a blue cheese, starts off as Taleggio. They're both Italian, and it just depends on what kind of mold they end up with. This one probably has a little bit of a blue mold on it just from being in our cheese case. And there's different spores floating around, the same way it could get like little white spots from any brie or candida mold floating around in our case. Kind of uncontrollable, but again, it's just another kind of mold that you would eat in the paste, so it's fine to dig into, but that's where you get that color variant from.
Okay.
Yeah, I love these together too. I mean, they have the contrasting like sort of funk and sweetness, but the Colorado Riesling also has kind of that minerality to it that you're, a little bit of like what you're getting from the Taleggio. So.
Yeah, I think a big minerality, especially in the rind here. I think that's what you get. Pretty fun.
All right, guys.
Moving on. We have another one you guys might be familiar with, our Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir. There's that bottle for those of you who haven't seen it. Looking nice. Now this one is coming from Sonoma Coast, but like most Pinot Noirs you've probably had in the past, it's a lot lighter, it's a lot softer, it's a lot fruitier. It's like I often describe it as an entry-level dry red. So, you know, and I often consider like fruitfulness interchangeable with sweetness. So, you know, this one, try to think of as like kind of your fruity or your sweeter red wine.
Mm-hmm. So for the cheese, we've selected Pavé du Nord, which is kind of like a French take on a cheddar. And this is another one of those contrasting flavor pairs where the Pavé du Nord is on the lighter side. So it matches up as far as the intensity goes with the wine. And then this one it's pretty earthy, quite mild, despite maybe looking super pungent or flavorful. It's kind of an easygoing cheese to go with an easygoing wine. And I think also like the Pinot Noir has like an elegance to it. And I would attribute that to this cheese as well, just because of its texture, its color. It's sort of an all sensory pleasing cheese.
I would agree with that. I think we kind of have like an earthy with earthy thing going here because, you know, this reminds me a little bit of an Oregon Pinot, and it kind of has a little bit of that wet forest floor serve earthiness to it, you know, which matches up a little bit with the kind of funk I'm getting on this one.
Yeah. Pretty cool cheese though, shaped like a brick. Back in the day, in France, they would hide these cheeses, or they couldn't, you know, to be able to ship them out, they made them shaped like a brick so they could just stack them on a cart to send them out, and nobody would think the wiser of it because it looks like a paver stone. That's where the name comes from.
Hey, Courtney, I have a question from Tracy who wants to know what wine would go best with a sharp cheddar?
Sharp cheddar. We would do like any big wine. So like I think next on our list is the Petit Verdot, and we're doing cloth-bound cheddar with it. Which is another big sharp, like a sharp cheddar. But you just need to match up the intensities together. Like, because I think especially a sharp cheddar, if you're going with like a Wisconsin yellow, like big, bold Wisconsin cheddar, that can really like coat your palate and sort of wash everything out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I would be careful with those. I'm kind of curious to know which cheddar you're pairing.
Yeah, more aged cheddar might need a bigger wine too, because as that cheese ages, it loses moisture. You kind of get more concentrated fat content, so that'll balance out some of that tannin.
Yeah, and also just like a big tannin bomb too, which could be pretty fun.
So Courtney, do you feel like cheese has a representation of its terroir, just like wine does, the sense of time and place where it originates from?
Absolutely. This cheese especially, I mean, this cheese comes from Jasper Hill, and they're a really established, well-executed creamery in Vermont. And there's nuances in their cheese from season to season. You know, I've tasted wheels of this cheddar that are, where you can really taste the pasture, the grassiness, the horseradish in it. Like, you know, like Napoleon Dynamite, the cow got into an onion patch, you know, that kind of thing. So, so I definitely say the terroir has something to do with it. What the cows are eating, you know, it all goes into play, you know, as long as it's coming from a small, you know, a farm that values those characteristics.
Love the Napoleon Dynamite reference.
Oh yeah. Horseradish patch or something. But yeah, this stuff is special. Lactic.
You know what? I'm about ready to move on to that, if you guys are.
Oh, yeah, sure. I know, since I'm into it already. Getting my nose up in there.
So Andy, before you turn to your next one, I got two more audience questions. First is for Courtney. What does cloth bound mean?
Ooh, so maybe, I don't know if you guys can see it, the texture of this cheese, but there is, it's wrapped in cloth. It's wrapped in cheesecloth and then smeared with lard and then stuck in a cave again. The fat, the lard on there sort of protects it from growing too much crazy mold on it, and it just ages nicely in there. So when we get this wheel, it's still covered in all of this crazy cheesecloth. and what looks kind of like a waxy coating on it. But it's a traditional English style of aging cheese, and that's what this guy is going for.
And my other question comes from Sherry, who wants to know what would be a good wine to pair with Caprese?
Crazy. If I remember, that's like a
Caprese salad?
Caprese salad, yeah. So fresh mozzarella, basil, tomato. Fresh mozzarella.
I'm thinking something like it's something Italian. I don't know.
Summertime Italian whites, I'd say, because that's
Yeah.
that's ripe tomatoes, fresh mozzarella, fresh basil, all things that grow in the summertime. So maybe you guys can fill in the blanks with what the wine would be, but that's what I would go for is, a white spring.
I would go for a classic Pinot Grigio. Again, pairing food and wine from the same region.
Yeah.
I would go with Chardonnay because everything pairs with Chardonnay.
We all agree on white though, so there we go.
Yeah.
Springtime white.
So our next wine, hopefully you guys are familiar with if you got your club shipments or you've picked up, is our new Colorado Petit Verdot 2018. This is one of my favorite varietals that we work with. For those of you not familiar with Petit Verdot, traditionally it's Bordeaux blending grape. Mostly used in blends, mostly to add some depth of color, some tannic structure, so a little bit more of that bitter bite to it to make it more food friendly. And so it's a little bit like a big Cabernet Sauvignon if you were going to make one comparison with these. So our Colorado Petit Verdot, little bit fruity on the front end, like just a lot of dark fruit right on the front end, but there's a lot of this kind of savory, sweet, kind of caramely, I don't know, clove spice, good things, amazing things with this one.
And that's probably one of the wines that we get asked to pair the most with. And honestly, like this one, hands down, the cloth bound cheddar is a great one. And if you're looking to pair your wine with a cloth bound cheddar or something similar to this from your grocery store, what you're looking for is sort of the texture where it crags off in chunks, kind of a drier texture, pieces off. You'll find those kind of cheddars a lot on the East Coast, and then also England, like English style cheddars, Neal's Yard Dairy, Montgomery's cheddar, that kind of stuff. Just a cheddar that's aged a couple of years will get that sort of consistency, and I think that's going to deliver the punch that you need for that Petit Verdot.
It's also one of my go-tos at the cheese shop, day to day.
But I gave you the big piece.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
We have a question from Andrea. What about Vermentino for a Caprese salad? I think that sounds good.
I'm not familiar with Vermentino.
I know, not either. I was going to fake it.
It's an Italian, so I think it works. Going back to
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that would be a beautiful wine with Caprese.
Fun.
Cool.
First demeanor, one of those.
Sit and enjoy these for
Courtney, can you while Andy sits there and drinks and enjoys, Courtney, can you tell us what's the difference between the cheddar that you guys sell versus grocery store cheddar cheese that comes in a little shrink wrap? Because it's apples and oranges when you taste it.
I'd have to say the biggest thing is age and how they're aging it. Not that there's anything wrong with a shrink wrapped aged piece of cheese, because we have a cheddar from Wisconsin called Hooks 5-year cheddar, and it's awesome just for what it is, a big, bold Wisconsin cheddar. It's cryovac, but it's really good. So not poo-pooing on any of those, but I think that's the big difference is how they're aged between just being stuck in some plastic and sent out, or being kind of artificially aged where they sort of tweak the flavor with, A, B, and C to get that, to get an aged cheddar taste, a deeper taste, compared to any of the cheeses that we have here that are, aged naturally and have a natural rind on them and come from, happy cows and happy places.
I've heard before that that all those yellow cheddars are artificially turned yellow. Is that true? And if so, why are they doing that?
I have no idea why they choose to turn them yellow, but it's not like some icky, yellow number 5. They use annatto, which is just a natural colorant, and I have no idea why they use it. Maybe just as a distinguishing characteristic. I'm not sure.
It's less exotic if it's yellow, a little more approachable. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe just
Probably,
to appease children. I don't know. Yeah.
probably for marketing, they're thinking more color is going to be more appealing.
There you
It
go.
could be. I mean,
tag the
who
kids
knows?
from the
Yeah.
American singles to real cheese.
Right. Well, yeah, you'd be able to tell the difference.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa would like to know, how do you tell a happy cow?
You know where they come from,
Okay.
and they're eating grass.
I don't know.
Like a free range cow.
Free range cows, yeah.
They have a lot of friends.
They don't really smile. Can they smile?
They
Is that something cows
smile.
can do?
Yeah, they're treated well. They get to have babies and hang with their babies and all that good stuff. And, just kind of knowing where, just like you want to know where your beef comes from, it's good to know where the milk from your cheese comes from.
All right, Andy, take us on.
My mouth is full.
Oh, sorry.
But we're going to finish pretty big here.
So
Gorgonzola and our port-style Syrah.
I'm sorry, I missed the cheese. What's the cheese going to be?
Gorgonzola.
I'm going with Gorgonzola.
Okay.
I don't have like little chunks of it there. For a port, I'd say Leanne and I did a pairing, I think 2 summers ago, where we had this, where we had Continental Divide's port, and we paired it with a Bailey Hazen Blue, which is another Vermont blue, and it's sort of our Stilton stand-in, just a domestic version of the Stilton. And I'd say that's probably my top choice, or the most common one to pair with a port as far as a blue cheese goes. But I don't have Bailey in right now, or Stilton, so we're going with just another kind of classic Italian blue. Really good, like snacking blue cheese. You can really get down on it, like I do often.
Until fairly recently, I was kind of anti-blue cheese, and these, the Gorgonzola kind of got me into it. So
Yeah.
same way Pinot Noir is an entry-level dry red. This is a good entry-level blue cheese. And so here we've got kind of big with big. Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than a blue cheese unless you're going with, some of the wash dryings that we talked about. So yeah, this could stand up to anything pretty much.
And all the sweetness of the port really balances out like that, that hefty bitter funk of that the mold in this blue cheese. Like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of has kind of a nutty funk going on to it, the way a lot of the cheeses do too.
Yeah, this is good stuff.
Hey, Courtney, we have a question that says, can you tell us how long different cheeses should age, and what is the oldest cheese around?
Oh,
How long cheeses should age? As long as they're supposed to. Don't let them age too long in your refrigerator, because cheese can just die in there. Especially softer cheeses, they can get funky quick.
But I think the question is, if you go to a grocery store or a cheese shop and you see a cheese that says 3 years aged or 5 years aged, is there something that makes the 5-year better than the 3? And what's the optimal length you'd want?
There's no optimal length for sure.
I think that might be a matter of preference a little bit like wine.
Right. So as cheese ages, it loses its moisture, and the flavor kind of condenses and sweetens a lot of the time. So if you went with a 2-year cheddar compared to a 5-year cheddar, you're just going to have a higher concentration of flavor, less moisture, so more of crumbly. Don't count on cutting that or slicing it into slices. You're not going to get nice little cracker squares or anything like that. But yeah, just like a wine, I'd say you just need to find your age, because we've got We have a
People
4-year
out there don't like aged wines. There are some people out there who don't like those like fresh, fruity new ones.
Exactly. So like, this is our oldest cheese we have right now, and it's a 4-year aged Gouda from Holland called Nord-Hollander. And you can see that, I mean, it's craggly. It's, you know, it's got those little flavor crystals in there that people often mistake for salt, but they're actually just a crystallized protein that happens as cheese ages. So if you're a fan of those, look for an older cheese. But yeah, think more flavorful as time goes on.
And Tony's asked sort of a similar question, which is when you buy a cheese, cut it open, you have a little bit of it, you wrap the rest of it in saran wrap. How long will that last in your refrigerator?
As long as you want it to.
In my experience, sometimes the stale cheese is actually half decent too.
I mean, still, yeah. And I think anything aged 6 months or older, you're going to get a couple of weeks out of it if you keep it tightly wrapped. And again, if it ends up growing any of those little spots of mold on there or anything, it's perfectly safe to just pick those off, you know, flip it off and just keep eating the cheese as is. Me and my husband have cheese in our refrigerator right now at home that is like blue, and it is not a blue cheese. You know what I'm saying? We're just going to cut that off, and we're just going to keep going with it because it's fine on the inside. So yeah, just use your own judgment though. If it stinks, if it doesn't taste good, don't eat it.
The smell test is reliable with all foods, wine.
Yeah.
Pretty safe.
A little smell first and then a little taste, and if it's, you know, then you're good.
To answer the question I heard a minute ago, oldest cheeses, I just poked around to kind of figure it out. The oldest
cheese
cheddar I was seeing was like 40 years old.
40?
There's a whole bunch of ancient Egyptian stuff, which is probably not edible.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question from Yaya who wants to know what goes with feta.
Ouzo?
Feta's going to be a softer cheese.
Feta is soft. It's fresh. It can be made from sheep, goat, or cow's milk.
I would probably go with a white.
Because feta is so fresh and salty, a classic pairing or one of the better pairings for feta would be a sparkling.
Ooh, yeah. That sounds good. But yeah, it's another one of those fresh cheeses. So you can kind of take, think like, you know, something that you'd want to drink in springtime because it's not aged, you know, it's just like a fresh, juicy cheese. It's just packed together and basically, you know, sold as is like that, you know, and it's even sitting in like a bath of brine. The good ones are just, they sit in a bath of salt water when you receive them. So yeah, just like a bright white, I think sparkling wine would be awesome.
For anyone who's like averse to white wines too, you know, usually with these lighter cheeses, you know, if you insist on going with a red, just go with something lighter. Mm-hmm. You know, like a Pinot Noir, a Beaujolais, or, you know, something along those lines.
GSM blend. Mm. Yeah.
Courtney, when you're storing wine at home in your refrigerator, does storing it in cheese paper make a significant difference versus saran wrap or plastic?
Cheese paper is great. The reason why cheese paper exists is because it's sort of plastic on the inside, but it's perforated. So you have paper on one side that breathes because it's paper, and then you've got a perforated plastic. So you just have like a really nice environment to preserve your cheese with that.
I was not aware there was cheese paper.
Sorry?
I was not aware there was cheese paper. I thought there was just wax paper and like parchment paper.
Well, that's special paper for sure. I'd say that cheese paper is probably optimal as long as you can seal it up nicely and tape it shut, keep it tight. But there's nothing wrong with using plastic. I'd say my least favorite would just be plain paper because it'll get too dry. It doesn't trap in the moisture enough.
Courtney, Anna wants to know why some people call orange cheeses yellow and yellow cheeses are called white.
How yellow are the yellow cheeses that are called white?
Isn't that subjective?
Yeah, I don't know.
On the on your vision.
Well, this is like, I mean, let's see. Hold on a minute. Let me go to, I don't know if people can see me here. I'll go to this.
See, this is why I don't like to buy clothes online. The color is always on my monitor.
This is called white cheddar. Is that really white?
Yeah, that's
kind of looks yellow on my screen.
Well, yeah.
It is a little yellow, and that's the question. Why is this slightly yellow cheese called white cheddar?
I don't know. You stumped me again.
Anna says she wins. She stumped the cheesemonger.
Yeah.
Or if you look at it under a microscope, I wonder if whatever's changing that cheese to kind of yellow, you know how like the skin color on a newspaper is white with a bunch of red dots, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you zoom in on that cheese, maybe there's a whole bunch of little brown, I don't know. Good
Pixels.
question.
Or because it's lighter than the dark orange cheeses. So they're considering it white.
I feel like, you know,
back to that annatto
white
question
cheddar
as well.
popcorn they sell at the gas station has a kind of yellow tinge to it.
What's that?
You know that like white cheddar popcorn they sell at you know the Smart Food, whatever it is, that almost has a yellow tinge to it too, doesn't it? I don't know.
Courtney, John wants to know why you're called a cheesemonger.
The cheese.
Mongers, I think in any sense, like the definition of the word is just like a caretaker. So we are the caretakers of the cheese.
Wow. So are we wine mongers?
Yeah, you're wine mongers for sure.
That's awesome.
It's like husbandry, kind of, monger.
Folks, before we wrap it up, if you have any final questions, go ahead and type them in. I've got one from Vince who wants to know what cheese would go best with, what wine would go best with spicy cheese like jalapeno cheese?
Riesling.
I might say like something like the Riesling Süß, probably something a little bit sweeter with something spicy, because I often like to pair spicy foods with like a sweeter white wine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love either Riesling or Gewürztraminer with anything spicy. Those are my go-to favorites for any kind of spicy food, or including spicy cheeses.
Mm-hmm. I was on the fence about, we have a spicy cheese in the case, but I went with the Taleggio. But
what is your spiciest cheese that you have for sale today?
We don't carry like spiced or flavored cheeses very often, but we have one that's a jalapeno pimento cheddar, and it's just delicious. Yum.
Elizabeth wants to know what cheese would pair with a rosé.
Ooh, what cheese? I always have rosés with salad. Like maybe there's feta on the salad most of the time, something like that. So
a goat cheese I think would be good with rosé, or sheep's milk. I think.
We have some people saying yum. They agree with that.
Yeah, goat or sheep. In any age, I think too. A young one or an old one. Cheeses.
Yeah, the rosés are usually a little bit fruitier, so I think I would almost want to pair that with like a slightly funkier cheese, although maybe more of a mellow funk, a little bit more along the lines of this truffle brie.
I think it's, for me at least, when I would drink a rosé, I want like the brightness of it, and I just think it's like such a happy wine, and you just want like a bright, fun cheese that like keeps you light, light on your toes.
Courtney, we have an attendee called Anonymous. It's a very unique first name, who wants to know what the best cheese is to make a grilled cheese sandwich.
Well, there's a couple of cheeses that are, that always makes it onto my burger.
More than one kind of cheese on a grilled cheese sandwich too.
That's true. If we were going to make some fancy grilled cheeses at home, we would use Alpine style cheeses, Swiss Alps, Swiss style, what do I have? Swiss raclette, Comté, Gruyere, those kinds of high Alpine cheeses they're just made to melt. Like think Swiss raclette, that kind of thing. I think those would take the cake. However, they are a little bit like kind of nutty, funky, pungent. So you could easily take it back, by using a cheddar or maybe a Gouda on there, a soft Gouda, to kind of make it a little bit more approachable or maybe even kid friendly. But there are certain cheeses out there that wouldn't melt very well. For instance, Manchego, it would just kind of separate its fat from its curd, and it would just be icky and greasy. And how to pinpoint what those cheeses are,
That almost has a greasy texture to it too. It almost.
yeah, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think just by looking at it, whereas getting my Comté, this just has a nice, super dense, packed paste, and like.
Which one is this, Courtney?
This is Comté.
Where's that from?
This is from Comté in France. But it's like Gruyère's twin sister that moved to France. So, but yeah, the same kind of style, just a firm, dense Alpine style cheese. They're just made for melting, and they're wonderful.
Awesome. And I do know you guys had little fondue melters, right?
We have what? Yes.
I said, don't you rent fondue melters? I think I've seen them on your shelf.
Yeah. Yeah, we have all different kinds of things to melt cheese with, but yeah, we have the little pans that you put under the broiler, and then also like the big guy that you would see like at the Swiss restaurant where, it's like the big heating mechanism and you put the big piece of cheese on there and it heats it up. But yeah.
We had amazing grilled cheese the other night, and we chose aged cheddar, Monterey Jack, and a young aged Gouda. But it was on homemade wheat sourdough bread. Our winemaker's wife, if you guys don't know, is the most amazing bread maker. So we've been buying homemade fresh bread from Maggie. And to me, when you have a grilled cheese, yeah, it's all about the cheese, but the bread is a big critical piece too.
Oh my gosh.
I knew she made some good cookies. I didn't know she was making bread.
Rockers.
Wow. This is kind of exciting, guys. We have
bread.
This is kind of exciting. We have a question coming in all the way from Sherry in Canada, who writes, lots of great information and very entertaining. We look forward to future CDW events. Can't wait to get back to Breck. We don't get a lot of Canuck wine and cheese in Colorado. Maybe we could send some ice wine to you. What cheese would pair well with ice wine?
What is ice wine?
So ice wine, for anybody who's not familiar, it's a type of dessert wine. It's a type of late harvest sweet wine where the grape is frozen on the vine for 3 days before it's harvested. So there's a lot of sugar content. Mm-hmm. So those are, real fruity, real sweet dessert wines. I would think for something like that, again, maybe like something kind of funky, like the Gorgonzola, although the Gorgonzola, certain blue cheeses might be kind of big for ice wines because those aren't going to be quite as big as a port. But, what I've seen oftentimes with sweeter wines is usually something a little bit funkier to kind of offset that. That also might be another good one with like a spicy cheese. Maybe.
Hey guys, we're almost out of time. Courtney, this has been hugely educational, fun. Really appreciate you opening up the shop tonight and inviting all of us in to come and visit with you. We do have some audience members who I can see are in Summit County. So what are your hours right now during this crazy time?
Right now during this crazy time, we're open 11 to 2.
Okay.
So yeah, 11 to 2. Come see us. You can come in, check it out.
And for those who want to do wine pairing, Andy, what are our hours in Breck?
11 to 4 every day. So come by, get your supplies.
And for those who are in Park County, Leanne, what about Fairplay?
Hours in Fairplay for bottle sales and pickup, 11 to 4, Fridays, Saturdays, and Mondays.
Thank you.
Every other day, just drive over here.
There we go. Hey, everybody, thank you for joining us. This is great. Join us next Friday night, 8 p.m. Colorado time. We'll be exploring all of the California wine regions, both famous valleys and hidden jewels. And we really hope you'll come and join us for that. Also, for those who haven't heard, we just got news that at least the tentative plan by the Summit County officials is to open up Summit County to out-of-town visitors again on June 1st. So if you've been dreaming about when you can come up to the mountains again, fingers crossed, but it looks like they'll be opening up in Summit. And I think Park County is going to be the same, June 1st. But definitely check with the local officials on that. And we'll keep you posted on our website as well as we get more news. To everybody who joined us tonight and to all of our panelists, really appreciate you all. Cheers to everyone. Stay safe and have a great weekend, everybody.
Cheers.